Welcome back to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. Today we're diving into one of the most dramatic breakdowns in modern American infrastructure. A collapse of the U.S. aviation system triggered by the federal shutdown that began on October 1st, 2025. With 63,000 essential workers suddenly unpaid, airports across the country spiraled into gridlock, exposing how dependent this high-stakes system is on human stability. What followed was a chain reaction of delays, reroutes, international pivots, and a global recalibration of airline strategies. America's dominance in aviation is no longer assumed, it's being tested. Here are the key developments as the crisis unfolded. America's aviation engine stalls, when the backbone finally broke. America's aviation collapse began the moment paychecks stopped. More than 63,000 essential workers, 13,000 air traffic controllers, and nearly 50,000 TSA screeners were suddenly expected to keep the nation's airways functioning without compensation. For decades, this workforce served as the reliable backbone of global travel, but the shutdown shattered that stability. By late October, controllers called out because they couldn't afford fuel, childcare, or rent, while underpaid TSA officers searched for other jobs. The people who kept airports running simply broke under financial strain. Airports quickly spiraled into chaos. Houston saw security lines stretch for hours. In New York, up to 80% of controllers were absent. On November 2nd alone, over 4,200 flights were delayed, and more than 550 canceled, one of the worst disruptions since the 9/11 national ground stop. This wasn't caused by weather or hacking, it was human exhaustion. The shutdown exposed a painful truth. America's aviation strength rests entirely on its workers, and once they cracked, the entire system collapsed. And that breakdown forced the FAA into making its most difficult decision yet. FAA pulls the emergency brake, slowing America's skies. As controller shortages spread nationwide, the FAA faced an unprecedented dilemma: allow unsafe traffic levels to continue, or intentionally slow the skies to prevent disaster. Officials chose the slowdown, calling it a controlled burn, to keep the system from collapsing. In early November, the FAA ordered mandatory flight reductions at 40 major airports. What began as a 4% cut escalated to 10% as staffing levels deteriorated. Major hubs, Atlanta, O'Hare, JFK, LAX, Denver, Miami, Seattle, had their peak daytime operations throttled, effectively choking off the busiest travel hours. The impact was immediate. Mass cancellations, cascading delays, and stranded aircraft rippled through the system. Airlines tore apart schedules, dropped low-margin routes, and rerouted flights simply to avoid congestion. Behind the scenes, officials warned that missing a second paycheck could reduce operations to a trickle, while retirement rates surged. The FAA even discussed creating ghost airspace, shutting entire corridors of sky. This wasn't a routine slowdown. It was the closest America had come to voluntarily grounding itself. Before we push further down this runway of revelations, hit that like and subscribe button. It keeps the Piston Pundit engine running and helps us reach more viewers who love deep dive breakdowns like this. Now buckle up as we shift into the next chapter. Because the moment America slowed its skies, other nations hit full throttle. Asia and the Middle East rise as America stumbles. As America's aviation system buckled, international carriers moved quickly to protect schedules and passengers. Airlines across Asia and the Middle East began redrawing their route maps in real time, no longer willing to gamble on U.S. delays. Long-haul flights that once connected directly into Los Angeles or San Francisco diverted to Vancouver or routed cargo through Anchorage, where operations remained predictable. What started as a temporary workaround rapidly evolved into a structural shift. Meanwhile, Asian hubs like Singapore Changi, Seoul Incheon, and Dubai International operated with striking consistency. Backed by long-term strategies and political stability, they became global models of reliability. International carriers took note and increasingly bypassed the United States altogether. The shift became symbolic when China Eastern announced the world's longest flight, from Shanghai to Buenos Aires, avoiding North America entirely. This realignment mirrors global manufacturing trends. When one hub falters, activity gravitates towards stability. Aviation simply followed the same logic, accelerating a move toward a multipolar system centered in Asia and the Middle East. But the changes didn't stop with rerouted flights. They struck at America's reputation itself. The collapse of trust. America's aviation reputation crumbles fast. Delays can be fixed and staffing shortages can be replenished, but the loss of trust is far harder to repair, especially in aviation. For decades, the U.S. system symbolized reliability and safety, shaping global schedules, business travel, and freight routes. But as the shutdown dragged into its sixth week, that reputation began to crumble. Corporate travel departments quietly rerouted executives away from U.S. airports, and international airlines started factoring American political instability into their risk models, something unthinkable only years earlier. The financial fallout was widespread. Rerouted flights meant permanent losses for airports, ground crews, fuel suppliers, and maintenance operators. Each new alternative airlines found outside the United States further entrenched global dependence on non-U.S. hubs. This erosion mirrors the long-term damage seen after major automotive safety scandals. The incident fades, but doubt lingers. That doubt now shadows American airspace. The world has seen that the system can be crippled from within, and rebuilding confidence will be an uphill battle. And as confidence eroded, another reality emerged. The world was no longer waiting for America to lead. A new aviation world emerges. Multipolar routes replace U.S. control. The shutdown didn't create the global shift in aviation, but it accelerated it dramatically. Asian and Middle Eastern hubs had already invested for years in advanced infrastructure and long-range capabilities. When the U.S. system faltered, these regions proved they were ready to lead. Singapore maintained unmatched efficiency, Seoul leveraged seamless tech integration, Dubai strengthened its role as a global crossroads, and Istanbul expanded as a strategic Eurasian midpoint. Meanwhile, Shanghai prepared to launch the world's longest direct flight, signaling China's ambition to reshape global routes. This isn't just a change in flight patterns. It marks the rise of a multipolar aviation order, similar to how the automotive world expanded from Detroit dominance to a global network spanning Tokyo, Seoul, Munich, and Shanghai. Global mobility is no longer anchored to a single hub, but distributed across multiple reliable centers. America remains influential, but no longer the uncontested leader. The shutdown exposed vulnerabilities built over decades, while other nations demonstrated that true reliability comes from preparation, not prestige. Which brings us to the ultimate question: what happens next? Verdict: can America reclaim the skies? The aviation shutdown did more than disrupt travel. It reshaped global aviation power. It exposed that the system once seen as the world's gold standard was more fragile than anyone imagined. As America struggled, Asian and Middle Eastern hubs stepped forward with consistency and ambition, accelerating a multipolar era where reliability, not tradition, defines leadership. Whether the United States regains its footing now depends on restoring trust, modernizing its infrastructure, and strengthening its aviation workforce against future political turmoil. The world has already begun shifting. The question is whether America can adapt, or whether global aviation has already moved on. Before you go, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think America can reclaim its place at the center of global aviation? Are Asian and Middle Eastern hubs now the true leaders of long-haul air travel? And what does this aviation disruption remind you of in the automotive world? Share your insights and experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to Piston Pundit to get notified about the next vehicle updates and upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, and see you at the next pit stop. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.